This is the 2022 Kia Telluride, and it's powered by a 3.8-liter V6 engine. Steve here, Cars with Steve, and before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to Durham Kia for giving me access to this vehicle to shoot the video for you today. Check down in the description below for their contact details. Now this is going to be an in-depth video going over everything you need to know about the Telluride. We're going to be looking at cargo dimensions, engine power, horsepower, torque, all that fun stuff, first, second row, third row spacing, and everything in between. Now this thing is powered, like I said, by a 3.8-liter V6. We've got the option for either a 7 or an 8-seat configuration as well, and it's at a competitive price point for the features that you get inside of this thing. Now this specific one is the SX Limited, which means we've got that full 360 camera, we've got a heads-up display, upgraded Harman Kardon sound system, and a number of other things. But let's dive into it, have a little bit of fun, and see what's going on with the 22 Kia Telluride. Looking at some exterior styling of the vehicle, I love the look of this thing. Really sharp. Styling wise overall, I can appreciate what Kia's done from a design perspective. But looking at some of the basics, the rubber itself on the vehicle, we're looking at either 18 or 20-inch tires, just depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're looking at. And we do have a series of different options for the rim. Because we're in the SX Limited, we've got this beautiful aluminum rim. When we get into some of the blackout packages, it's going to change the complete dynamic look of the vehicle as well. Now, as we start to move forward, we've got our LED headlamps and our fog lamps. Those are going to be standard on the entire vehicle lineup. And looking along the very front, I love the Telluride badge in the front of the vehicle there. And then with Kia's new logo just along the front in this beautiful black honeycomb grille, I think looks really sharp in this thing. Taking a peek underneath the hood of the vehicle, and this thing looks really clean. Now, it's because obviously it's a newer vehicle, but it's just organized nicely. Now, Kia did opt for the actual engine cover there, which just hides some of the mechanical components people don't necessarily like the look of. But looking at it, this thing does only have one available engine choice, whether you're in Canada or the US, and that's the 3.8-liter V6 that we're looking at here. From a power perspective, this thing is going to be able to push out 291 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. So plenty of power when it comes down to it. And this thing is actually paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission. But I do love the overall look and the aesthetics of this thing under the hood, and Kia has given easy access to a number of things. So we can easily top up some fluids if we need to. We can easily check our oil, and then we've also got easy access to the battery. Right now, moving to the back of the vehicle. So we've got our rear wiper, which is always a nice touch. We've got our Kia and Telluride badges there, as well as our LED tail lamps. Now, it might be LED, might be halogen, just depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're looking at. From a towing perspective, this specific one does not have the hitch receiver. If you did have that, you'd be able to tow up to 5,000 pounds in this vehicle. We do have a dual tip exhaust just along the right-hand side there as well. All right, now taking a peek at the key fob of the vehicle. So great look when it comes down to it. We've got that new Kia logo along the back, and we've also got a remote start button. We'll get to that one in just a second. Looking along the side of the fob, clean look as always. We've got our lock button, our unlock button, our trunk release, our horn or panic alarm button, and then along the bottom we also have our emergency access key. So we can get into the vehicle, lock compartments, things like that by accessing this key. So very straightforward there. Now, in order to be able to remote start the vehicle, what we're going to do is make sure that the vehicle is locked first, and then you're just going to press and hold this button. So we're going to hold. So as you can see there, remote start is now active. In order to be able to cancel the remote start, you just press that circle button again once, and as you can see, remote start is now canceled. Now, getting into the trunk of the vehicle is a very straightforward process as well. So if we take a peek on the actual fob, just right above the horn panic alarm button, we've got our trunk release. So we can press and hold that in order to be able to lift the liftgate up. We've got our smart liftgate, so we can just approach the vehicle from the back. And then on the back of the vehicle, we also do have, just underneath the U in Telluride, we've got a button there. So we can literally press that in order to be able to open this thing up. Very straightforward though. Let's have a peek at the cargo dimensions. All right, so cargo dimensions for the vehicle are going to be showing up. So as you can see there, we have plenty of width, depth, and height to the cargo area. Now that's just it. It's the cargo area by itself. So it's literally just this area that we're measuring right now. So we don't have a ton of space just here. But one of the nice things is that we can also lift this thing up, and it's a completely removable tray. And we have a little bit more storage space right underneath as well. Now, folding the third row down is also a very straightforward process, but it's a manual process. So literally all we're going to do, we're just going to take these, we're going to crank it, and that's going to lower the headrest automatically. And we can just push this down, and it is a flat fold, which is great. Same thing along the other side. We're just going to crank that, fold down as well, and we are set to go. But look at the difference in the depth when we have that third row folded down. So a lot more space, which is a nice thing. Now, taking a peek at the actual dimensions, I've got a few different height measurements that are coming up. One of them is from the actual tray itself to the very top of the loading area, and then another one is inside a little bit to the very top of the roof. Now, folding down that second row, we've got a couple different options because we've got a button just along the back here, and that's going to let us power fold either the left or the right side down independently of one another. If we had the bench seat instead, same thing, it would just be a release for those other ones as well. But if we hop onto the side, so if you're not in the trunk area, you need to load some things up, we can, just along the side there, pull this little latch, and that's going to literally fold the seat down there as well. But look at the difference in the cargo dimensions when we've got that second row folded down, so a lot more depth. And like I said, I do love the fact that we've got a split seat there, so we can fold down one side or the other if we wanted to, and it's a very straightforward process in order to be able to do that. All right, now as we start to get inside of the back of the vehicle, so as I mentioned, this tray, we can easily remove this, gives us a little bit more space as well. Now the spare tire for this thing is actually located just underneath the vehicle, so we need to unlock a part of it first in order to be able to take that tire off. Very straightforward there. Looking along the left-hand side, we've got two different buttons, and that's going to be for the second row, so we can release that second row there electronically. And then we've also got a 12-volt power point, so we can plug some things in the back if we need to. Now, outside of that, that's really it for this back part of the vehicle. We do actually have a part for a cargo shade as well, which means that we can block some things off in the back here if we wanted to. Now looking at some standard technology in the vehicle. So we're always going to have our backup camera, that's going to be there regardless. We also do have a reverse sensing system, also something that's going to be standard. Blind spot system lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot at either side of the vehicle, also a standard feature. Now, taking a peek at the front of the vehicle. So a few things that may be standard, may not be depending on your trim level, are going to be the forward sensing system with this front-facing camera, which is going to give us a full 360 view. That's available in some of the higher trim levels, but it is nice to know that we've got that safety as an option. Right now, filling up fuel inside of the Telluride is also a very straightforward process. So just along our driver's side, we've got a little cutout there, and it is a cap system, so just unscrew, fill up, and you're good to go. Now, when it comes to the fuel quality inside of this thing, minimum manufacturer's recommendation is just regular 87 gas, so your regular fuel. Do you need to use a premium? Absolutely not. Now, getting into the third row of the vehicle is a fairly straightforward process. Now, a couple things to note though. This thing is available either in a 7 or an 8-seat configuration, depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're looking at. This specific one is the 7-seat configuration. So, I mean, technically we've got an easy pass through to get into the back there. But if we wanted to make things a teeny bit easier for ourselves, we've got two different options. We've got a button just along the very top, and we've got a button just along the very bottom. So bottom button there, literally all we're gonna do is press that, and that's going to slide the seat forward, and there's quite a little bit of space there. I do have the driver's seat set up for somebody 6 feet tall, and I can easily pass through there. Now, obviously, if you've got people in the back, they're not gonna be able to reach that front one, so button along the very top, we're just gonna push that button in order to be able to, same thing, slide this seat in a little bit more. Now, looking at third row spacing inside of the vehicle. So I've got the second row set up for somebody 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall, and with me sitting fully upright, my head actually touches the top. So the top of the very lip here, so it does touch, so something to think about there. But one of the interesting things is that we actually technically can move the seat forward a tiny little bit if we want to. So here's a little lever just along the left and the right-hand side. We can crank that up. With me sitting fully upright like that, same thing, I'm just touching technically up overhead. If I kind of move forward a tiny little bit, I've got about an inch roughly of headspace. So it is nice to know that, I mean, if you've got a family that are a little bit shorter, they'll definitely be able to fit back here, no problem. Feature-wise, inside of the third row, not too much back here. We do have a little vent control along the back, which is nice. We can open and close it as necessary. Along both the driver and the passenger side, so we do have a few USB ports, and we have a few cup holders in both of them as well, which I think is always a nice touch. All right, now hopping into the second row. So great style when it comes down to it. I love what Kia's done with this, but there is so much back here at the same time. But let's start off just looking at basic spacing. Like 6 feet tall, driver's seat set up for somebody 6 feet tall. I have a great amount of knee space, good amount of foot space, and up overhead, I've got about a little over 3 inches. So it's at like 3.5 inches of headspace up overhead, which is nice. But one cool thing is that that same lever along the side that we use in order to fold the seat forward, if we crank that up, we can actually fold this seat backwards a little bit more as well, so we can recline it a bit. With it reclined, like literally probably 6 inches of headspace, so taller people will absolutely be able to get inside of this thing, and the seat itself is actually super comfortable. Headrest is really nice, fully adjustable there as well, almost as if we're riding with a pillow behind our heads. That is a really cool thing. But a couple things to point out as well. So if we actually take a look along the driver passenger side, we do have some pockets along the back, so we can store some things easily if we want to. We've got a few cup holders there. There are a few cup holders along the doors as well, which is always a nice touch. Now, as we start to move down, we've got a 12-volt power point, as well as a traditional 150-watt outlet, so a traditional wall outlet, so we can plug some things in there if we want to. But one of the cool things is that this wall outlet also is rotating. So what that means is essentially just a safety thing. So if you've got kids, they won't just be able to jam things into there. You've got to actually, it's got to rotate in order for you to be able to plug things in. So this is a nice safety touch that Kia's decided to do. A few USB ports along the side there, which again, I love the fact that Kia's done this. It's such a simple thing and it looks really, really nice at the same time. Now, as we start to move up overhead, we've got some pretty cool climate control settings there as well. But basics, we can turn on our lights, so our dome lighting along the top. We can also figure out not only what's going on with the temperature, we can control our fan, we can figure out if it's going to our face or to our feet, and we've also got an auto setting in the back there as well. So a lot of flexibility when it comes down to it, but I love the fact that we've got such great controls, and it looks really nice at the same time. But one really, really nice thing that I love about the Telluride is the heated seats, but this thing also has the option for a ventilated seat. So I love that fact. Like, we're sitting here right now, I'm like, it's like 32 degrees Celsius outside, so it's a little bit toasty, but with those ventilated seats on, it makes a huge, huge difference. So it is nice to know now that ventilated second row seat available in some trim levels of the vehicle, not available across the entire lineup, but it is nice to know it is available there as an option. That is a cool thing. But one other thing to think about is that this specific one is the 7-seat configuration, which means that we do not have that middle seat there. If you had that middle seat, you would essentially only be able to have heated ventilated seats for the outboard seats. That middle seat is never going to be heated, so definitely something to think about. And then one other nice thing is that we also do have a shade along the top there, so we can easily pull this thing up and over in order to block a little bit more sun, and that's going to be the same for both second row windows as well, which is a very, very nice touch. Up overhead, we do have our little handle, and there also is a hook on the top as well. Right now, taking a peek at along our driver's side door. So along the actual handle itself, we do have a little button there, and we can use that button in order to be able to unlock or lock the vehicle. So as you can see there, we do have our power folding mirrors when we unlock and lock as well, which always is a nice touch. Hopping inside the vehicle. So lots of things to point out, but firstly, let's talk about how great the interior here looks. So great look along the door. Along the top there, as you can see, we do have some seat memory buttons. We've got 2 individual profiles there. Looking at the actual buttons along the driver's side door, we've got our basic for our window control. We can actually power fold that side view mirror. We've got our basic for our window control, and then we can also kill off power to those back windows. Along the driver passenger side, we do also have a few pockets along the side there if we need to store a few things, bottles, things like that. And just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, we've got a series of different buttons here. Each one's going to do something different. So we can either increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen. We can turn our blind spot collision system and our notification system on or off. We've got our lane keeping system, traction control, and then we can either open or close the liftgate from the inside as well. All right, now hopping into the driver's seat. So same thing, this thing is, first of all, super comfortable. Headrest there, it's so nice. It's literally like I'm laying back on a pillow, so super comfortable there. And it is fully adjustable height-wise, which is always a nice touch. We don't have the option of reclining this thing, so it literally is locked into place. We can just go up and down with it. So it would have been nice to see this thing kind of recline backwards, forwards as well, but it is nice that it is at least extremely comfortable on our head. So I'll give you a point there, Kia. Now, this video is just going to be a short one looking at some of the basics of the steering wheel as well as that media screen. If you're looking for a fuller walk around, check down in the description below because I've put together a comprehensive video there as well. But looking at some of the basics, so we do have first of all, very, very beautiful look. We've got our new Kia logo along the top there, which I think looks sharp. Along the top left-hand side, we've got our voice command prompt. We can change between a series of different modes, so things like AM, FM, Sirius XM, answer or hang up on a phone call. We've got our volume rocker and our volume control along the left pad. Pad on the right side is going to let us change between screens inside of the instrument cluster. We've got our adaptive cruise control system as well, so that smart cruise system, which essentially is going to be a set it and forget it cruise. So let's say you set it at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically going to brake. If they pick up speed or get out of the way, yours will pick back up to that set speed again. So it is a great safety feature there. Along the left stick, that's going to be the one to figure out what's going on with our running lamps. Right stick is going to let us figure out what's going on with our windshield wiper for the front and for the rear. Right now, as we start to move over, so beautiful multimedia screen when it comes down to it. We do have factory navigation, and on top of that, we do have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support, which means that we can use Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze directly through this middle screen. But if you're looking for more of a walk around on this screen, check down in the description below for that fuller video instead. But a lot of features when it comes down to it. One of the cool things is that, yeah, we do have rear control for people in the back. They can control their climate settings, but if they're fighting about it, we do have the option of locking it out, and we can also control it from the front here as well. So we do have that option, which is always a nice touch. Moving down, we are push button start inside of this vehicle. That's going to be the same across the entire vehicle lineup. We've got our basic for our volume rocker, which let's do a quick little audio test. Don't let the days go by, glycerine. Such an incredible sound, and that's the beauty of this Harman Kardon sound system. Speakers literally all over the vehicle, and it sounds absolutely incredible. Moving down a tiny little bit, we've got some basics for some hot buttons. So we can hot button press to get to our map. We've got our navigation setting menu. We've got a hot button press for our radio, media screen, four-way blinkers, and a number of other things. We also do have a tuning rocker, so we can manually tune that way if we wanted to, because we can just press the voice command prompt on the steering wheel, and that's going to let us do things like navigate. We can change radio stations, make phone calls, and things like that using our voice, which is a great touch. Moving down a little bit more, we've got the basics for our climate control. We've got some more advanced settings. By pressing that button as well, we can figure out what's going on, windshield, face, feet, all that fun stuff. We do have a heated steering wheel inside of this thing as well. Moving down a tiny little bit. So off to the side, both the driver and the passenger side, we have heated and ventilated front seats. So heated seats is going to be there at a minimum. We do have the option for ventilated seats depending on the trim level of the vehicle that we're in. Moving down a little bit, we do have a little storage space there with a 12-volt power point and then a few USB ports. So we've got one in order to actually hook USB devices up, and then another one strictly for power. Nice little area there as well, nice little storage space, which is always a good thing. We've got a phone-sized storage space. Moving down a bit more, we've got a few cup holders, and then we've got our basic gear shifter, which is always a nice touch, but it feels great in the hand. Which one of the cool things, we can flip this over to the side, and we can also manually flip gears out that way as well. So if you want slightly better control, we do have that flexibility inside of this vehicle. Now, as we start to move down a little bit more, we've got a series of different drive modes, and this is literally just a selector switch. We can jump between different modes there, and we can go left versus right. So we've got some basics for our drive, basics for the terrain. So we've got our comfort, eco, sport, and smart mode. We can switch it over to different terrain modes. So we've got our snow, mud, and sand mode. So definitely useful if you're going to be taking this thing off-road, and each mode is going to do something different. Down a little bit more, a lot of other buttons there. So we do have one for our auto start stop, so the one that's potentially going to kill power to the engine if we're stopped for an extended period of time. We can turn that one on or off. One thing to note, if we have it on and we turn the engine off, we do have to press it again in order to turn that system back off again. We've got a reverse sensing system. We can turn that one on or off, so that beeping that we get as we back up, we can disable that one if we want to. We've got our parking brake, so electronic parking brake. We're going to lift up in order to turn the brake on, and we're going to actually hit the brake and push down in order to be able to release that parking brake. We've got our auto hold setting, which I've always loved the auto hold setting, because what that does is with the setting engaged, if you come to a complete stop and take your foot off the brake, the car is going to hold in place. So definitely useful if you're on distance trips, stop and go traffic, things like that, and you literally just want to be able to stretch your legs out as you go. We also do have your My View. So that view itself is going to give you that option of looking at that full 360 view also, which is always a nice thing. Now, as we start to move down a little bit, we've got our armrest with a little storage area, and we've got another USB port there, and we've also got a removable tray, so always a nice touch that we can pull that thing out. Now, one other cool thing about the Telluride is that we do have the blind spot monitor as well. So we press that left turn stick, right turn stick, whatever the case may be, and it's going to show us what's going on beside us. So yeah, we've got that blind spot system, but we've also got the blind spot monitor as well. As we start to move up overhead, we do have our auto dimming rear view mirror, and we've got a series of different buttons. So we've got our home link, so if we've got a garage door opener at home, we can program in our garage door opener there, and a few on-off buttons. Up overhead a little bit more, we do have a sunglasses holder. And then we do have our control for the sunroof. So the first part of the roof is going to be a manual open. So we literally just open and close this thing manually ourselves, but we can fully open this thing up as well, which is nice. Here it goes. And let there be light. So nice. And one of the cool things is that we can actually open the front one and the rear one separately. So there are different controls there. So we can literally pop that shade open if we want to, and the shade's opening up there, and it just opens things up really, really nicely for that second row. One thing to note though, it is literally just this front part of the actual sunroof that's going to open. That middle part is just a shade, but it is nice to know that we can give people in the back a little bit of light, or just a better view up overhead as well if we wanted to do that. Up overhead a tiny little bit more. Let's close this out a little bit. Up overhead a little bit more, we do have our basics for our cabin control lighting. We've got our tow call, and then we've also got our SOS mode as well. Now this interior is actually kind of neat. It's like a micro suede almost, but feels really, really nice. Moving this visor down, we do have a little light there. We do have our vanity mirror as well in order to turn that light on. Little business card holder, and then we can take this thing out and we can extend it a little bit if we need to block some sun out as well. All right, folks, now time for the fun part. Let's take this thing out for a quick test drive and see how it handles on the road. Oh yeah. All right, actually, a couple things before I get started. I am gonna make sure I'm in sport mode. Like, yes, this is a 3.8 liter V6, but sport mode hangs onto those gears a tiny little, yeah, that's amazing. Oh, there it is. And now it's one of the nice things, the sport mode does hold onto the gears a teeny little bit longer. So 3, 2, 1, and that's pretty good. Pretty good. That's one of the things that I love about driving in sport mode. Like, whether your car has a ton of power, whether it doesn't have any power, being in that sport mode, it just hangs onto the gears even longer, which means that like, RPMs are going to raise higher, which means it just gives you better acceleration. Do you need to drive in the sport mode? No, not at all. But does it give you much better performance? Absolutely. I think one thing that I'm super surprised about is how comfortable this ride is. Like, really comfortable in the neck, great on the back. Super responsive, brakes are great. And like the overall spacing in this thing as well is, it's mind-blowing. Like, I love what Kia's done with this thing. So cool, so cool. And like, that's one of the interesting things, because depending on the trim level that you're in, like looking at base trim levels, like there is still quite a bit of technology that's standard inside of this vehicle. It's kind of neat. Now, one thing to note, depending on the trim level that you're in, you might have ventilated front seats, you might not. I mean, it's going to be a matter of preference, and one of the nice things about the Telluride is that it is such a cost-effective vehicle for the feature set that you get. Like, you look at other vehicles in this price range, or in this class, I should say, and the price ranges they're just complete night and day compared to the features that you get inside of this vehicle. I love what Kia's done with this thing. Like, the screen in the middle there, we've got factory navigation, we've got Android Auto, Apple CarPlay support, we've got tri-zone climate control, so dual zone for the front, and then also control for that second row as well. It's kind of nice. But let's actually open things up a teeny little bit. So good. So good in the in that sport mode. Okay, now I'm actually curious. I'm going to switch it out to the comfort mode and see what the difference is there. Because comfort mode is not going to let it ride as high with the RPMs, but it's still going to give us should give us a nice performance. Let's try it. Okay, coming up to an 80 zone right now, and gonna have a little bit of fun. 3, 2, and... yeah, such a difference between that and the sport mode. Like, instantly you can feel the difference. It's that sport mode, you put your foot down and it just wants to go, compared to the comfort mode, you put your foot down, takes a second before it just kind of like gently nudges you up to your speed. So it is nice though at the end of the day. It is good to know we've got the flexibility to change between different modes, and even the generic driving mode or the terrain modes, like knowing that we've got the flexibility of changing that to a snow mode if we're going off-roading with it, you know, taking it camping, whatever the case may be, and you're going across rugged terrain, we can switch it out to a sand mode or to a mud mode as well if things get a little bit too chaotic as we go. Kind of neat. It's so good. And out of this engine, like this 6-cylinder, I am so surprised at the performance of this thing. So it's comfortable, spacious. Like for me, I don't have any kids myself, but I come from a family with 9 kids. So having a bigger vehicle like this, like we had a Ford Windstar growing up, Ford Expedition as well. Like my family was a Ford family for sure growing up. And just looking at all the spacing and all the different features, like I never really looked at other manufacturers until I started this channel. And it's wild seeing what different car companies have to offer at the price points that they've got to offer them. Like I was in the Seltos a couple days ago as well, and the Seltos is like a $30,000 car that also has ventilated front seats as an option. Like it's mind-blowing, because you look, ventilated front seats typically something that you'd find in luxury cars, and like I'm not saying the Seltos is nice, but it's not technically a luxury, it's not in a luxury class, but having those features is really cool. Well folks, that was an in-depth look at the 2022 Kia Telluride. What did you think? I love this thing. Like spacing wise is great, feature wise, performance, technology, all around incredible vehicle. If you have any questions though, drop down in the comment section below, let me know. More than willing to talk you through any problems you might be having. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your social networks, and until I see you next time, take care.